This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 77. We're talking about getting feedback. Regardless of what you're doing, you're probably getting a lot of feedback, some of it solicited, some of it unsolicited. How should you respond and when should you listen? That's what we're talking about on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
The business formerly known as Project X, now known as Love Your Face. It's been a few days. You got great momentum on that.
It's been going well so far. You never know what to expect when you hit launch on Kickstarter, but I think we've had a really good response. We've had up to 60 plus backers in a short amount of time, and I feel really excited about it.
Yeah, that was almost instantly. You had that many people show interest, and that's great because it's scary when you hit that launch button.
Yeah, well, you see other projects on there get like $5, and you wonder, I hope people are going to see what I'm doing a little more than that.
There was a guy with a very similar, we'll call it a social enterprise. It's a clothing company. What you're doing is a skincare brand for women. And this dude, I think he was looking for $5,000, and he's raised $5 so far. Not 500, definitely not 5,000, $5. That's not even enough to buy one of his things.
No, and I think that's really common on Kickstarter is you have to do the back-end promotion on there. If you just throw it out there, which this guy probably did, and think people are going to find him and think he's cool, you're probably in to be disappointed, unless you have some really cool tech gadget that neither of us do.
Some stuff just takes off, but you can't count on that. This is a fun project. It's called Love Your Face, and if you want more information about that, lyface.com/Kickstarter will take you there. And we've got a special offer for you because Laurel and I are marketing people. It's possible for us to go into Kickstarter. This is our first one and have success with it immediately. It's going to be a successful campaign. If you want to know how we're doing it for your crowdfunding campaign, whether it's Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, any of these services, we can help you. We've got a special offer if you support Love Your Face. URL lyface.com/Kickstarter. $100 or more is going to get you some special training. This is called How to Create a Head-Turning Kickstarter Campaign. It's more than just head-turning, though. It's a Kickstarter campaign that will get attention, get you people excited about your project, and it's going to get you the type of backers that will go out and spread the word about your campaign for you so you don't have to market as hard. $100 is all it takes, and you also get a great kit from Love Your Face.
Exactly. We have a ton of great rewards on there if you're into skincare. If you're not into skincare, there are still cool things on there like t-shirts and stickers that you can get as well, and you'll be invited to our exclusive training, which is well worth it.
And even if you're a guy, because this project is for women, and if you don't know a woman that would be interested in it, just donate $1 because Laurel has some really great stuff that you can learn from. The way you're doing the updates is fantastic. The way you're reaching out to people, that's something that you can model for your own crowdfunding campaign. And $1 is all that will cost you. lyface.com/Kickstarter. This is the Red Podcast. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. We help you build an audience, sell more products, and make more money. And we do that via personality marketing. We help you to bring your personality and the personality of your products to the forefront so that you become famous within your industry and beyond. I've done it for 2 decades in the music industry. Laurel has done it several times over. Love Your Face is her latest project, and this is in a market that you haven't ever been in.
It's true. I'm teaming up with somebody who has been in this field for a long time, but this is my first big product launch, so that's exciting.
You are in the right place, and we're talking today about feedback. Before we launched Love Your Face, before we launched the Red Podcast, we got feedback. We still get feedback. Anytime you put something out to the public, you're going to get feedback whether you want it or not.
Unsolicited advice is always coming your way when you put your business out there and your products or services out there. But the problem is, a lot of times when you ask for feedback, you're not going to like the feedback that you get. This has happened to me with my new product that I'm putting out there. This has happened to you probably if you've had a business going for a while. You've gotten feedback that you don't like. So how do you deal with that feedback in a productive manner? And that's what we're going to be discussing today.
This is really a common problem, Laurel. You, as an entrepreneur, are developing something. You're very close. You understand it better than anybody else. You think everybody's going to be as excited as you are because you've seen the inner workings and you know what it takes to launch something. But the reality is not as many people are. I saw it all the time with the musicians that I worked with. You know what I think that they wanted to do when they would say, hey, could I just get your feedback about a record? Just let me know what you think about it. It's like, well, it doesn't really matter what I think because the album is done. Unless you're willing to get in there and change, nothing that I think about it can help you. What they were looking for from me was to just say, hey, this is great. It's the best thing ever. Don't change a thing. And that doesn't happen.
I was going to say, how many times does that actually happen?
Very, very rarely. Because if you're going to come to somebody like me, somebody like you, our job is to find the hole in the donut. Our job is to be critical. Our job is to find problems. I think you can find problems in anything. If you want that kind of feedback, you got to go to your mother. And not everybody's mother you can count on for that kind of feedback.
Yeah, my mother would not give that kind of feedback.
Yeah, some of them are worse than us as consultants.
Oh, yeah. I think we all go in wanting really positive feedback to know that we have communicated what we're trying to communicate in a way that makes sense to people, in a way that excites people. But I have to admit, I posted my Kickstarter project on a couple Facebook groups before we launch. I posted the preview link just to get an idea of what people thought.
And these are groups that specialize in Kickstarter feedback. These are people who have done it and fans of crowdfunding.
Exactly. So these are people that have knowledge about Kickstarter, not just random groups of people. And I have to say that the feedback that I got, it was a little hard to handle. These people were not great with constructive criticism. I felt like they were kind of tearing it down a little, and it makes you a little defensive. And that's what sparked this podcast episode today. Was us looking at that feedback going, okay, what can we pull out of this without getting super defensive about it? And there are ways that you need to handle things, and there are ways that you do not want to handle things no matter how negative the feedback is. So even me, who felt like, oh, I'm open to whatever you have to say. I haven't even launched yet. Was still getting defensive about my idea and about my project. So it's just been helpful to go through this again and learn again how to react to people.
Yeah, because we've been through this before, and we know how it looks from working with musicians, working with artists, working with writers, working with business people. We know how it looks when people aren't open to feedback. And you don't want to be that guy, but It's easy to be that guy.
Yeah, one of my responses on Facebook was bordering on super defensive. And I was like, take a deep breath.
Yeah, I had to come in and clean that one up.
No, you didn't. You probably should have. David was not at home when I responded to this one girl that I have probably alienated for life.
Well, let's talk about how to act. We've got a 3-step process for handling feedback. And let's forget for a minute if the feedback is good or bad. Let's just talk about how you should act, regardless of whether feedback is good or bad. This is step number 1. My advice is to avoid an immediate reaction because you see feedback and there's something about it that just agitates you, and you want to jump in there and defend yourself. Even if it's really, really good, you want to get in there and you think, everything is okay, everything is okay. I would say avoid an immediate reaction regardless of the feedback being good or bad.
That's definitely the one thing that I didn't do with this one girl that I responded to was I didn't pause on it. It wasn't that she was giving me terrible feedback. It's that I was reacting to the feedback, and if I had taken 10 minutes away from the computer, instead of responding immediately, I could have taken a deep breath before writing a slightly snarky comment back to her. So I would say correct, David, that avoid an immediate reaction. Just take a step back.
One of the things that I did a couple of days before we launched, because there's a great video for this, and again, the URL, lyface.com/Kickstarter. Watch the video. We had different variations of this video. This is the final one. I sent one of the variations to a woman that I've worked with for years. She used to be a project manager. I trust her. She more or less ran the company, and I know that she knows what she's doing. And she sent me an email. It was about 3 or 4 pages when we printed it out. And she was like, David, what the?
It had curse words in
it.
Yeah.
How come you didn't come to me earlier with this? This is a big problem. And I started to get defensive myself. I said, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's not the target market for this. She's not the person that is going to be buying this. So why am I even asking her? You start to justify that stuff. But I slept on it, got to it the next morning, and then I said, okay, she was right. She was right. She was right. Damn it, she was right. And we went in, and the video is better because of the suggestions that she made.
I think I said all that. I was like, David, we have to listen to her. We have to hear what she has to say. We ask her for feedback for a reason.
Yeah.
But it's hard when someone's giving you feedback, and we're not perfect. Nobody's going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect after listening to this episode, but you are going to have the tools that you need to make your project better without getting your feelings hurt.
But I think that's why you want to avoid the immediate reaction. You've got to take time to cool down. You've got to take time to consider the source. In my case, it was going to a woman named Wendy that has just been a great help to me with marketing over the years and knows what she's doing. She's a professional. What she said in there, even though she maybe wasn't as tactful as she could have been, she was right. And the reason, just as a side note, the reason she wasn't tactful is because we have that kind of relationship. We can be brutally honest. And I think that's great when you're going to somebody. You want the person that's going to be brutally honest with you. However, that can still sting. That's one of the reasons to step back and sleep on it and then go back to it and look at what they're saying, maybe not how they're saying it.
I want to emphasize what you said, David, is the consider the source. Is you really do want to consider the source of the feedback. If you're getting negative feedback from somebody in your family, somebody who doesn't understand what you're doing, a friend who's had the same job since you've known them, those kind of people that just don't understand business, don't understand your product or service, would never purchase anything from you unless they knew you. Those aren't the people that you really want to be listening to. And I just think you really want to consider who is the source of the feedback. Take a better look at the feedback that you get from people that you trust, people that understand you versus those who don't, no matter how well you know them.
Obviously, feedback is good. You want to go to the marketing professionals. In Laurel's case, for this Love Your Face Kickstarter campaign, she went to people that were dealing with Kickstarter day in and day out. They were the ones who were spending money on Kickstarter. They're the ones who were purchasing skincare. But when it comes to your product, the only opinion that really matters is the one of the customer who's willing to take out his wallet, reach in, get some cash, and give that cash to you. I've got a friend of mine, his name is Jonathan Kane, plays in a band named Journey. And Journey never, ever, ever got a good review from Rolling Stone. And when you think about reviews, movie reviews, book reviews, album reviews, that's feedback, right? But it didn't matter. They sold tens of millions of records. They had huge radio hits. They had huge tours because the fans loved them. The people whose opinions really mattered, they were coming forward saying this is great by spending their money, going to the shows, buying the records. So I think that that's important. I don't want you to not listen to feedback. In Laurel's case, she went to people and she was asking for opinion. You may not be asking for those opinions. They might just come in. Take it with a grain of salt. I think you need to look for the good and leave the bad because ultimately you're in charge.
Absolutely. And I think when you say look for the good, even if it's negative feedback, you look for the good in that negative feedback. Look how you can make things better. So with that, that was how to act. And I want to talk about how to respond, if you respond at all to the feedback.
Yeah, because you don't have to.
You don't have to
Some
respond.
people will get into flame wars on these feedback message boards, and that's awful. Like I gave a guy feedback on something. I said, this is what I think your competition is. I was looking for this exact product. Here's what I ended up with. He said, oh, no, you don't get it, man. You don't get it. That's not the competition at all. I'm doing a high-end thing. You just went for some kind of low-end utility. Well, I'm telling you, that's what I was looking for, and this is what I went with. So I think that probably is your competition. But I wasn't going to get into it with him.
Yeah, you don't want to get into it with anybody because that does make you seem really unprofessional. It makes you seem really defensive, which means you don't believe in your product as much as you need to be believing in it. So I'd say the first way to respond here is to always be professional. Even if you don't feel professional sitting behind your computer brooding about it, you need to come off as professional when you give any sort of response. And to do that, the first thing is you want to thank the critic for whatever they have to say. And that's That's really critical in my mind. And that was something that I was doing with this feedback. Thank you so much for your suggestion. Thank you so much for your response, your feedback.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for taking the time, because they do take time to give you their feedback, whether it's negative or positive.
Well, that shows that you're open to additional feedback. If you're not going to be receptive to the first person that gives feedback, the other people that might have better feedback for you, they're not going to show up because they see your response to the first guy.
Yeah, so you don't want to start that train going down the wrong track. So I'd say give them a thank you, appreciate them for what they did, and never get defensive. And even if you are defensive, which you might be, don't act that way. Don't respond that way. Just take that deep breath before you do anything.
You never want to blame others. You need to take ownership of what it is that you're asking for feedback on. Don't say, oh, well, the engineer mixed it down wrong. That's what I used to always hear from musicians. It's really better. You got to listen to it in headphones. That's when you're really going to hear it. No, I don't need to listen to it in headphones because that's not how I listen to music. Or sometimes authors will say, well, the publisher, they didn't hire the right proofreader. It would have been a lot better for that. That doesn't matter. This is what you gave me to give you feedback on. And the same thing with any product. The video that we put out there for Love Your Face, that was the video that was going out there. And we weren't going to blame the cameraman. We weren't going to blame the actors. We're not going to blame the copywriter.
I know, because I was the actor. So let's not blame me there.
Yeah.
I think lastly there is you want to agree on the parts that you can improve on. Or in other words, you want to look for the pieces in that feedback that are things you really do feel like would make your project or your business better. So look for those. And for things that you disagree with, instead of saying, oh, I disagree, I think you're totally wrong about this, like the guy that was being defensive against you, David, is instead ask for clarity on those issues. Okay, what do you mean by this? What do you think would help make that better? How would you do it differently? Questions like that help them go a little deeper and help you improve on what you're trying to do.
Or it will help you to know that that person doesn't really understand what it is that you're doing or doesn't know what they're talking about. So you don't need to respond to them in a way that you would have if they did know what they were talking about.
And another thing is, say they don't understand what you're doing or what you're talking about. Is that because of them? Is that because of the source? Or is it because that you didn't clearly explain it? And you hate to think it's the latter, but I think you have to step back and say, okay, this person should understand this product, and maybe I didn't clearly explain it to them.
Well, it usually is because we're so close to our own products. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, you're the guy who had to formulate this thing and actually get it to market. So you know the ins and outs of this thing. Go to Kickstarter right now and look how people are launching products. Look at the successful ones. Look at the ones that aren't successful, because it's not just how they're going out and trying to get people in to donate. It's how the messages are being communicated. See which ones you respond to. It's a great marketing lesson to just view anything on Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah, because you have one page and one video to tell people your whole idea and to pitch them on giving you money and to tell them about the rewards.
And here's another thing about Kickstarter that might not be obvious to some people. For your situation, Love Your Face, and again, it's lyface.com/Kickstarter if you want to watch this video. It's a skincare product, but you, because of the Kickstarter terms of service, can't talk about any cures. You can't make promises about this product. You can't basically hype it up like you would be able to in normal advertising. There's also a community social element, and because Kickstarter has limitations on money that you can give to charities, that was also something that you had to really walk a tightrope for. So sometimes your hands are tied.
Absolutely, because this is a social enterprise for us, and we're not giving any of the Kickstarter funds to charity, so we're completely following their rules, but we wanted to explain it in a way that made sense what our company was doing, but that didn't weird people out on Kickstarter, and you do have to walk a fine line there, and you do want to get people on board with what you're doing, but not piss anyone off at the same time.
The first step, how to act. Second step, how to respond. That's what we've been talking about. But how do you move forward? I teased this earlier. It's very important. You've got to remember who the boss is.
It's me.
Well, you don't want to lead by committee. I'd rather it be you rather than going over the woman on the Kickstarter board and the other woman on the Kickstarter board. And we've got Wendy in there. We've got everybody with a varying opinion of this thing. And it can't be everybody, because then we'll get nothing done. Then you're like Congress or something.
Look for ways that you can improve, put your defensiveness aside, but ultimately you don't have to change a thing. You are the boss. You can make whatever decisions that you want. You don't have to lead by committee. But if you are seeing themes across the board, if you're seeing that people are telling you the same thing over and over again and you're not listening, you're probably going to find yourself in a pickle down the road. So do look for those themes in the feedback and look for ways to improve based on those themes. But ultimately, remember that it's your project, it's your vision. You're the one that's doing this, so you're the boss.
I spent the last 20 years doing something that when I initially got feedback on it, the feedback was, this will never work. You need to do something else. And that feedback was my senior project. I was studying commercial music in college at the University of Memphis. I had an idea for how to promote music, and he said, no way. This will never work. You need to think of something bigger. So what I ended up doing was just kind of a fake project. I just thought really, really big, but I was like, this will never work. It's going to cost too much money, and I just made something up. But once I graduated college, I went right back to the idea that I really, really believed in, and it did work. And I did it for a number of years, and it still works today. And I think that that is a great example that just because you get feedback that says something won't work, it doesn't mean that it won't work. Plenty of people have been wrong. Plenty of books have been passed on that later on became bestsellers. Plenty of projects, plenty of products. People said, no, that'll never work. Like the pet rock. Who would have ever thought somebody could put a rock in a box and you would sell millions of these things? But that guy made millions.
I know. Or Harry Potter.
Harry Potter is a great example. How many times was Harry Potter passed over?
Oh my gosh, several times she was passed over. And if she just took that feedback from all those different publishers to say this book isn't worth it, we're not publishing this book, she would not have made the millions of dollars that she has made. So you can't just listen to these people, even if they're experts. You can't always listen to them.
Yeah, so if you really feel strongly about it, I'm going to tell you, press forward, but don't just turn everybody off. This is a very, very fine balance. If you keep hearing the same things again and again and again, maybe you should listen.
Also, if you are hearing the same things over and over again, this final thought here is that you can run it by somebody else. You know, take that feedback and run it by a third party, whether it's a coach or a mentor or someone that you trust that you've been working on your business with, and say, hey, what do you think of this? Let's look at it together. And that'll help you take a step back and help someone else kind of come in and see your business from the outside. But make sure it's someone that you trust.
If you've got questions, if you have comments, we are happy to answer those. You can reach out to us via our website at redpodcast.com. We've got another great episode about feedback and how to deal with it. That was redpodcast.com/4, the 4th episode. So you can go there if you want to go directly to listen to that. We're also available via Twitter, and redpodcast.com is how to get in touch with me and Laurel via Twitter. We'd appreciate if you would help us to spread the word and build the Red Podcast community. You can do that by leaving a review on iTunes. When you pull up iTunes, just search for Real Entrepreneur Development. We'll pop up, and you can leave a review there. When you do that, we come up more frequently in the search engines. More people find us. We help more people, and we build the Real Entrepreneur Development community. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.